I'm so glad you're able to be with us today here on the Inspiring Victory Show, where we have one of my favorite people. As you know, Bill Marsilii has been on the show twice and was such a big hit that we had requests for Bill to come back and talk to us about storytelling in business. If you didn't watch the other two, go back and watch them soon. And if you want to know more about Bill, let me give you a little background. Well, Bill and I have known each other for a very long time, since our days back in New York City quite a few years ago. And since then, Bill has moved to Hollywood and wrote a movie called Deja Vu, you can see in the background, with his writing partner. And now they are also going to be doing a movie called Time Zone for Amazon, which is in development right at this moment. Also, Bill's going to be doing his very first writing and directing project on an independent feature film. Can't wait for that. And is even working on a streaming show, I should say, as head writer on a series that will either be on TV or will be streaming, both really great. And so we're very, very lucky to have Bill and his incredible background, both on stage and in film and in writing, and certainly the understanding of story and how it can impact any audience, whether it's an audience you're trying to sell to or an audience that you want to understand what your business is all about. Bill's going to help us sort all that out today. Thank you for being on the show, Bill. I always love seeing you.
Thank you, Sarah, dear. Thanks.
Well, let's talk story.
Yeah.
Because story is really, really powerful when it comes to business, and most people have no clue about that. So why do you think that stories are so powerful to people?
What I do generally in terms of telling stories, creating characters, crafting a narrative, and what many of the most successful business people, entrepreneurs, captains of industry or whatever, what they tend to do in order to craft a narrative around a company. And it's interesting because one of the first things that many of us do as screenwriters is you think, okay, what am I going to call my company? And I ended up calling mine Mars Command, right?
Of course you did.
Yeah, largely because a lot of thought went into it. At one point, I thought, what about Silly Billy? Because my last name is Bill Marsilii, and I grew up being called Silly Billy. And
Silly Billy all the time, yeah.
If you want to write Oppenheimer, maybe the words Silly Billy Presents shouldn't be the first thing on the IMAX screen, right?
Maybe not. Got it.
So I set that aside. Mars Command, there's an element of playfulness to it. It
has the word command in it, which sounds
and it sounds kind of forceful. It sounds like, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Well, you tend to write a lot of sci-fi stuff, so there you go.
Yes, absolutely. It positions me as a sci-fi writer, which I like. It's got half my name in it. Yeah,
we'll take it. My company has my name in it too.
Yeah,
not the name you met me under, but the name I married.
Yeah, no, your name happens to dovetail nicely with what you want to do. Okay. But I think the real reason that I chose Mars Command, the thing that pushed it over the edge for me to choose that as a company name, it just tickled me to imagine some studio head in his office pushing a button on his desk and saying, "Get me Mars Command."
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, it sounds very powerful. I think it's an excellent choice. I like that. Well, yeah, we really had to figure out, on the Victory Company, the fact that even without me, the company stands just fine, because we do want people to win. That is kind of the goal, is to help them grow their business and help them to win. So it made sense. Right. Okay, so tell me, what makes a good story, Bill Marsilii? What makes a good story? In general, not necessarily for business. But just in general? Yeah, what makes a good story? How do we know it's a good story?
How about this? A compelling character or characters.
Nice.
Going through something that, whether small or large, is a critical moment in their lives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And what those words I just said that's not a question I've ever particularly answered, but it's a good one. As opposed to me saying, well, you have to have a protagonist, you have to have a plot, you have to have this. But really, whether you're watching a movie about a young boy in his father's jacket holding a rose and knocking on a girl's door, or whether you're watching, swarms of space fleets trying to blow up the Death Star, ultimately you've got a character in a situation. Actually, the ones that fail are the ones that are about fleets, as opposed to this farm boy who has always wanted to do this and now is finally getting a chance to be part of a rebellion. I think is really what it's about. Often when people, because I also teach at UCLA,
I meant to mention that. Yeah.
teach
Yeah. You
screenwriting
do
in a number of places.
screenwriting there. Yeah. So nobody knows stories like you do.
And often young people who really want to make a difference in the world, and this may by extension speak to business people, you want to do something big, you want to do something that's going to make an impact, that's worth devoting years of your life and weekends, not with your friends, trying to get this venture off the ground and make your career, make your place in the world. Often students will come to me and they'll present an idea and they'll say, it's about man's inhumanity to man, or it's about love, or it's about social injustice. And my response is that it can be all of those things, but what it really has to be is it's about this guy.
Right. Yeah.
Or it's about this young woman. It's about this young woman. You can say it's about social injustice, or you can say it's about this young woman who grew up in the poorest provinces, managed to get out, and now that she's achieved some wealth, she's giving up her cushy dream corporate job in order to go back there and try to get food to those provinces past the warlords who've been seizing UN shipments. That's still about injustice.
That's a great story. Right? Would you write that movie for me? I would go. No. I would go.
But yeah, you have to put a face on it and a personal story. Otherwise, it's a paper, that you're aiming a camera at, not a person. It's a social talking point, or it's a speech, it's a textbook. There are places for that.
They say, you see a movie and 10,000 people die, it's sort of a statistic. You don't know any of them. But if one person dies that
one death is a tragedy. 10,000 deaths is a statistic. Yeah.
Is a statistic, absolutely. But it is true. I think in the business setting, if you're telling a story, and sometimes that's the story of the founder and the story of how the company got made, but we have to fall in love with the character that you bring. They have to have something noble or interesting or special about them, or some desire to do something. And I did create a formula that a lot of people use for sort of that, like almost like a hero's journey, like what Joseph Campbell would say, but I call it a leader's legacy, because it tends to be the leader that is telling the story. And not everybody identifies with feeling like they have to be a hero. It seems a bit much. But if you start a business story with, I always wanted to have an incredible business, but I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks and things were tough and I didn't always have food, and our family didn't always have food. And, but eventually I got my one break. And if you can hit that absolute low point and then find, the one thing that allowed you to move forward, or allowed the character to move forward, and then have like the three hardest things, the low point, the three developmental things, then I was able to, sell for another business. And then I was able to start my own business. How do you find that purpose? How do you find those sales? How do you find that success in a business? And so it all kind of ties together, but it's that formula is always the same of she had this dream of making it big, and she had these problems along the way. Because you've always seen this, like people have like, so-and-so wanted this, and then things went perfectly until it's like the most boring story in the world. Is that conflict? I mean, in my formula, obviously you have to have some negative things and then a low point, and then they have to start making things happen, which is how almost every business in the world happens. It doesn't happen, easy and perfect and wonderful. But is conflict, or those challenges or those difficulties, is that part of what makes a story good, or am I missing something else that's important there?
Well, there's a version of that question that applies to screenwriting, where absolutely, narrative storytelling, conflict is really important, or at least challenges. It certainly challenges or obstacles. The example I used earlier about thinking specifically about the kid who's about to pick up the prom date who's out of his league, right?
Okay.
Is there a conflict there? There's certainly a challenge. There's an obstacle. His conflict is his own fear or worry. There's some suspense. Is she going to open the door and go,
ew?
Oh no!
Or is she going to say, "Oh, thank heavens"?
Or is she going to open the door and go, "Hi"?
I was hoping it would be you. My God.
So there's suspense and all of that.
Except in that one short movie that you did.
Actually, I did do a short where a guy opened the door and literally there's somebody.
I do watch your movies. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you. But where a business is concerned, I think one of the reasons that everybody tunes into Shark Tank is also one of the things that at least one shark on the panel always asks. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what led you to do this, right? And I don't know that any of the, aspiring entrepreneurs on Shark Tank ever walked in and ever answered that question. You said, well, Mark, my dad's a millionaire and he gave me a couple million. And I thought, well, I don't know, I'll give this a shot.
It's been easy the whole time. Yeah. That's been no problem whatsoever. Yeah. That's not
maybe it'll fly, maybe it won't. I don't, What do you think? It's like somebody like, no matter how viable the actual product is, that might be the kind of thing that's called a Shark Tank faux pas. That's not how you inspire people to say, I want to get behind this man.
I want to get behind this. What makes them the leader? What makes them the hero? So,
now that said, conversely, if an entrepreneur or somebody who's starting a business starts their website by saying, I grew up in the wilds of Sleepy Hollow with 9 brothers and sisters, and there were times Daddy couldn't keep us fed. But people in Sleepy Hollow, they're generous, and they would bring us venison or something they'd hunted that week. And you're scrolling and you're thinking, this is a hardware store. What does this have to do with anything?
Yeah, it had better tie to something that you sell at a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are different stories that suit different people different ways.
Yeah. You have to know.
It's interesting.
What's
One of the things that virtually everybody knows about Apple is that it started with some friends in a garage.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of those things that instantly creates a kind of an interest in this company. Yeah, good for them.
Well, I think there's something about, you remember Stella Adler? I got to study with her in New York for quite some time. And she had some really brilliant things to say about stories. But one of them was, what's universal about your story? And what are I call them Me Too's, which are vary from country to country, I've discovered. But universals is this something everybody's felt love, everybody's wanted love, everybody's wanted to be successful, everybody's failed. There's what is it that's universal about what you're talking about that people can relate to? And then, when you're on stage, Me Too's are really important. I mean, if I'm in England and I'm talking about the American QX4 form we all have to fill out, they would just look at me blankly. But if I talk about something that's specific to their business or their country, or their business and their country, then they oh, ha, 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 they think that's the most hilarious thing ever, even though nobody else in the world knows what that means. So if you can find things that, I think in the United States, all I have to do is say, when we were kids and we all ate macaroni and cheese, and everybody's like, oh, I can identify with that. But, you can't do that in England. So it's interesting how what you're talking about is what is universal. And maybe we can't relate to being bazillion, billion, trillionaires, but we can relate to wanting to start something that does help people, that makes a difference, that has an impact, that grows, and that, starts in a humble spot. And that's what makes it interesting. Also, I think in stories, especially when you tell them on stage, if you start with, I wanted to be successful and therefore I was perfect every moment along the way, and now I'm so ridiculously successful that you can't relate to me, then all of a sudden you've got people who are like, well, that's fine for you, but you're not a real human. So, it would never work for me because I'm just a regular person. So I think it's how do you find those universal pieces and make it into a story it's interesting enough. And like you said, is it applicable to the situation? If it's on the front page and it doesn't tie to anything you in your hardware store, that was a great example because it doesn't make any sense. But if you're a professional speaker or author or consultant, what you have done plays into what you currently do, then it is more compelling. Yeah.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, using the hardware store example, and I'll move on to something else in a moment, but
I like that.
But if somebody's splash page started with, my first toy when I was 4 years old was a toolbox with plastic tools in it. And then in Sleepy Hollow, where I had 9 brothers and sisters, then suddenly you're thinking, okay, this is somebody's dream ever since he can remember is, I love working with my hands. I love doing this. And if I can do something that's going to help everybody else have that same love of, mechanical labor that I had when I was a little kid, then, please shop here. We're glad for your business.
Yeah. And that's, you could say,
yeah.
and that's why we have classes for kids every Saturday on how to build a birdhouse. And that's why we have classes on how to do a back fence and all these other things, because I want everyone to have the joy of making things themselves. And, so we're here for you, the individual, and we're here for professionals. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, wow, that makes you different than every other group.
I think so. And you were talking about, you used the phrase Me Too's before.
Not to be confused with Me Too, which movement, which is different, but yes.
Yeah,
but
you don't want that as your
no, it's
corporate.
different. No, but just like where you're sitting in an audience or you're watching it on YouTube.
You go, oh yeah, I relate to that.
Oh yeah, I can the easiest way. I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something, by the way, and this doesn't always refer to or apply to these megabuck corporations. How many times going back to forever, going back to Dickens times, earlier, there'd be a sign over the front door of the bell. It says, Thomas and Sons, such and such emporium, or Thomas and Sons Jewelers or something. And just from the name of the business, you think, oh, it's a family. Okay, so there's some pride in this. This is something that's going to be passed on from generation to generation. They put their name over the door. They must be proud of this. And you wouldn't put your son's name on the door if this was a rip-off joint, right? Because
hopefully
then your kids are going to grow up.
It's telegraphing a story in just a couple of words.
And a customer is like, oh, I wish my sons would help me out.
Or my daughters,
Yeah, these must be nice people.
You see sometimes you'll see Thomas and daughters, which is lovely.
Not too long ago, I needed work done on my car, and I asked a friend of mine for a local auto mechanic in the area, and he recommended a place called Dad and Me Auto Repair. And my dad had his own auto repair shop when I was a kid. Oh man, I had to go.
Right? Definitely.
And he was an incredibly ethical guy. The only time in my life that I ever gave an auto mechanic money when he didn't ask for it. I had a problem with my car. I drove it there. He put it up on the hydraulic thing, looked, he put it down there. I can't find anything wrong with it. And it turned out that I was leaning on the starter or something. That the problem was I was pressing the gas down.
At least
while
he told you, and now
you
you know.
Yeah. But he wasn't going to charge me. And I said, oh, you spent an hour doing this. And I gave him $50, right?
Please don't go get lunch on me or something.
But the name over the door actually turned out to be an exact, my dad would have done the same thing,
It matched that. But I think that gets us into what are the values of the company, and can you telegraph those values to like-minded people, whether it's in, the name. I mean, obviously the Victory Company is partly my name, but it's also, I would pick it even if my name were Smith, because of the fact that we really are in the Victory business. We are in the business of making businesses successful on a daily basis. So, but we hope that telegraphs that in a story form in that name. What's interesting though is that, all businesses are told, what are your top values and what are your value words for your company? But those can be really powerful if they're attached to stories, I think, wouldn't you? I mean, if you can have, what are your top 5 values, but they're attached to stories stories are just so much more sticky. I think they stick in people's brains. But if you say our top values are kindness, appreciation, growth, success, people go, that's nice. But if you say, here's what that means, here's a story that's attached to success. We had a client that wanted to be more successful in this, wanted to double in 1 year or less, and we helped them go from 75 million to 156 million. That actually took 2.25 years. But, and that's what success means, is that that was their goal. We helped them get to that goal. And I find that the stories that attach to those values help my team a lot more understand this is, success doesn't, or excellence is one of ours. They don't have to do an excellent job on every email confirming, and yet they actually do. But, it doesn't mean that everything that goes out the door has to be not perfection, but it does mean that on the important things that really matter to clients, that they have to be excellent. And if I give an example of Leslie staying up till 2 in the morning to make sure that somebody gets the most perfect agreement ever written because she knows that's going to make them happy, that also honors the people that are on my team. But I think just launching into those 5 without it tying to a story. Again, if we can find a story about the founder or about the company, or stories attached to those values, what that really means, it seems to mean so much more. And didn't you read a book that was talking about even going further than the 5 values? Tell me about that.
Yeah, last year I picked up a book called Your One Word by Evan Carmichael. He has no idea who I am. I don't have any relationship with him. This isn't a paid plug in any way. And in anticipation of talking to you today, I actually went and got it. It's called Your One Word.
Okay. It sounds great.
I found it helpful because often when you start on a business venture, you read other books that will tell you, craft a mission statement. And in fact, he encourages that crafting a carefully constructed 100-word bio of yourself that tells your story, and not just here's where I grew up, here's where I went to school, here's where I got my business degree, here's who I've ever worked for. That's a resume. That's not a story.
Right.
Any more than you go to see a movie that's about, I woke up in the morning, I showered, I shaved, I got in the car, I went to work, I earned money, I came home, I had dinner and went to bed. That's not a story, even if it's a series of incidents that
of points.
But the thing that makes it a story is, why did you do that? What obstacles did you face along the way? If you're a writer, what is it that dragged you back to the keyboard? Speaking of writer stories, one of the most famous writers in the world is J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books.
Yes.
But anyone who knows anything about her probably knows, beyond the success of the Harry Potter books, that her own story was that she was a single mother living on public assistance, writing Harry Potter in longhand on legal pads in a coffee shop during the 45 minutes a day that her child would fall asleep in the stroller. How compelling is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that would make a good movie, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And she was crazy to be somebody who's a completely unpublished writer, said, plot out, I'm going to write a 7-book series for children, and I'm going to write a children's book that's 200 pages long.
Yeah, exactly. Hundreds. It was nothing you're supposed to do. They're supposed to be short if it's for young adults or children. It's supposed, there was nothing about it that it defied every rule. And yet, even though many publishers embarrassingly passed on it, it again went on to be one of the biggest phenomenons in literary, probably the biggest in literary history.
It's absolutely gigantic. That's an example of where the story of the person who created it is as compelling as what they've created. In business, we see stories like Mrs. Fields' cookies, for example. The fact that she was a home baker, and so she began baking cookies, and I think bringing them to events or bringing them to things, and that it sort of took off from there. That's more interesting than perhaps calling the product yummy chocolate cookies. Well, then Mrs. Fields cookies. Mrs. Fields, who's that?
Who's Mrs. Fields? Yeah.
And then somebody seeks out her story and thinks,
and it's interesting.
Oh, I know exactly what it's like to go stir crazy for 7 hours while my kids are at school, my husband's at work, and I'm smart enough and efficient enough that I got all the housework done in an hour and a half. No, I don't feel like watching General Hospital, Young and the Restless, and Days of Our Lives.
Thank you very much.
What the heck am I going to do?
Yeah. I think a lot of people think that there's the story of the founder or the story of the company, either that their company has to be huge like Apple or that their story has to be incredible, but I think most of us think our stories are just our stories because we already lived them and experienced them. And we don't realize that sometimes even just the simple striving to achieve a goal you achieved that helps other people can make your company that much more compelling. It doesn't, again, housewife in the suburbs who's bored but wants to do something that makes people happy and creates those cookies. But it's still a compelling, interesting story that she was able to make that into something. And it doesn't even have to be something as big as Mrs. Fields cookies. Sometimes we also love the underdog, love knowing that, Hertz was always number one and Avis was always number two. We try harder. So we may be just as compelled by that.
Some of you viewing this might be thinking, it's like, yeah, I've tried that. And I'm telling you, my story of how I did this is not that interesting. Or maybe it is. Here's one for those of you whose dad did give you $1 million and you thought you'd give this a shot. Sometimes it might not be your story. It might be the stories of the people that your business is serving that is compelling.
And again, you don't have to be saving children for it to have an impact. I have a formula that I give clients a lot. What you can do is, again, have this compelling story about what your business does, or have a great name for it that is the benefit of what you guys do there, or have a tagline or a slogan that does the same thing. And then when you have these examples of clients you've worked with, there's an easy formula for turning those into a story, not a case study, but into an actual compelling little mini movie that's really, really short. The first thing you do is you say, we had a client that came to us and they wanted something. They wanted X. They wanted to double their business in 1 year or less. Yay! That's what we do over here. And then, we did, we helped them with, all their social media. We helped them create a podcast. We helped them write a book, whatever we ended up doing, we built something special, whatever we did with them. And that allowed their business to double naturally. So that at the end of only 12 months, they were able to double their entire business. Isn't that great? So if you start off with something they wanted, explain how you did it with them, but not go into great detail, like your example of, go to work, drive your car, eat lunch, 3 things that are just sort of simple and easy to grasp. And then what was the great result? That formula, you can use that over and over and over again to make the client the hero. They wanted this and they were willing to work hard. We were willing to work hard. And there you have it. And what were the great results you got them? And can you quantify those with a number or percentage or something that helps people see that? And then backtrack to what did they want? How did we do it? And again, what was that great result? So that formula works over and over and over again. And it's a lot better than when people say, how do you do that? If you say, well, let me give you an example or two, it's much more powerful than saying, well, we start with an assessment and then we discuss it with you and then we create a plan. Oh, God, pull out a pillow and take a nap. And those may be wonderful things that you do, but they aren't necessarily interesting to the client.
Yeah, I'm not a business consultant, but here's something you might want to check out that I found helpful.
Well, and you kind of are, and you are in business. I mean, what I love about you is that you took.
I'm the CEO and president of Mars Command.
Exactly, and which I love that you have that business name. But
Me and Elon, like this.
You and it just so close, yeah. And then, but I love that, you have looked at your whole career as it is show business. It's not show, hang out and have fun. I mean, it's show business. And you have done a lot of very smart, savvy business strategies and things to get where you are, when a lot of our writer friends weren't, who were also talented, maybe not as talented as you, but that they weren't able to make it in Hollywood because they didn't have that kind of business acumen behind it. And you had a natural instinct for it that you have used. I am so incredibly honored to have you as a part of the Inspiring Victory tribe at the Inspiring Victory Show. Please do us a favor. We really need your help. Please like, subscribe, share, write a comment. It makes a huge difference with how many people we can reach here at the Inspiring Victory Show, and it makes a big difference to me personally. I want to make sure that we're providing content to as many people as we possibly can so they can grow and succeed. So we'd love to have you continue your membership here at the Inspiring Victory Show. It's free. Helping us out costs nothing, but it makes a huge difference in how many people we can help. So double your business, double your impact, and change the world. And thank you so much for being a part of this extraordinary community. Thank you. Oh, no, I was going to say, but tell me about the book. I love this idea of the one word. We just started chatting about it before the taping of this. What did you discover in that book that we should be maybe reading it?
One of the things that I liked was choosing what I believe he calls aspirational mentors, which means that when we think of choosing a mentor, we often think, who do I know who can I contact that will take me under their wing? But as a storyteller, my aspirational mentors might be Rod Serling, Gene Roddenberry,
the Twilight Zone, and also Gene Roddenberry,
but
Star
also
Trek
Phil
fan, if you don't
Hartman,
know.
God rest his soul, from Saturday Night Live. I really cared for him a great deal and identified with him because he had this story where his acting career was going fallow, and so he thought, well, I guess I'll be a screenwriter. I was a drama major with you, dear, at NYU. But now I'm a screenwriter.
That's right. Look how these things go.
The horse wanted to go that way, and
ride the horse the way it's going, honey. Yeah, that's how I ended up here.
And Hartman, at one point, he said when he kind of gave up, so to speak, thinking that he was going to be an actor, he said that's when he actually started to book jobs, because he would go in and it wasn't fraught with, that bit from a chorus line, God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. Instead he says,
it's so hard.
In between other things I'm doing today, I have this audition. Well, that should be fun.
It's not my whole life. Yeah. I'm not attached. He
didn't live and die. And here's a piece of advice that's not from the book, but from me. Take it for what you will. One of the things that I guess I'll use the phrase attribute my success to, but whatever degree of that there is. The moment that things turned around for me was when there was something I cared about more than living and dying by whether or not I'm going to make it as a screenwriter. And as a corollary to that, I was writing and performing my own stuff, and I began writing screenplays. What I wanted most was actually to be an actor. Now, I knew that I was...
And you were good.
Well, thank you. But I knew that I wasn't just a dilettante as screenwriting goes, when I knew that I was genuinely a storyteller and a true screenwriter, when I got incredibly excited about a children's book I found that I thought would make a great movie. It became my first sale. I spent 2 years pursuing the book rights, and there was not a role for me in it anywhere. But I loved the story. Right.
Yeah. Whereas you're a story person. Yeah.
Whereas too often you'll see people who write something just because they want to star in it, and it's a vanity project through and through, and then you end up with The Room, the Tommy Wiseau movie, in case you're curious. Rather legendary, and it since has been, that story has been told in a bigger movie called The Disaster Artist, that starred James Franco. Yeah. So I had many friends at NYU who were film majors and who lived and died by wanting to be screenwriters. And because of my background as a performer, I also cared very deeply about what I was writing, but I didn't live and die by it quite the same way. So the rejections or the challenges didn't hit me as badly.
It's less personal too. Yeah, it's a little. It's one of the problems of being a performer or professional speaker too, is that they're talking about you.
That's exactly it.
It's not this. It's not this a bunch of pieces of virtual paper that you can discuss. Well, I'm not really sure I like chapter 2, or I'm not sure I really like the second section, the second act, or whatever.
Exactly. The comparison that I use is my friend is crushed because they didn't like my screenplay. I'm like.
Right.
They didn't like my face.
I'm too tall. I'm too short. We all
we need somebody with sex appeal here.
Thanks a lot, buddy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you have plenty.
If you dealt with that kind of rejection, then having your screenplay rejected doesn't carry the same sting as if that's where you live and breathe.
Yeah. Anybody who's ever gone on auditions knows you can literally be told you're too tall, too short, too fat, and too thin all on the same day. And that, that gets to people, and that not enough sex appeal.
I know somebody who was literally told, I'm sorry, we're looking for somebody with sex appeal.
I thought I had some. I'm married. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Somebody thinks I'm
thanks,
hot. Wait.
thanks, dude. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
really
You know, I
awesome.
was friends with you. I don't know if you know who Anne Ranking is, but she was in All That Jazz, and she was
Oh
a
yeah,
great
no,
Broadway choreographer for decades and decades. And she was tall, and she was a great dancer, great singer, great choreographer. And in All That Jazz, she was just a miracle to watch on stage and on film.
hmm
Well, we became friends because she came to lecture at NYU, and we became pals. And she said that same thing about detachment. I now know is a Buddhist concept of you just don't hold on to everything so tightly. It just doesn't happen that way. But what she said was, she said, the way I dealt with the rejection factor of being told, literally, she's quite tall, being told she was too tall, maybe she wasn't tall enough, wasn't thin enough, whatever it was. She said the way she dealt with that was, she said, I'm going to pretend that I'm not auditioning to get a role, that I'm taking a class in how to audition. And I'm going to do this
interesting.
class for it's amazing how reframing your mind in whatever I tell this to salespeople sometimes. And I say, just pretend you're taking a class on how to get good at sales. And then all of a sudden they start selling a lot. But anyway, so she said she said, I'm just going to pretend to taking class. And so she would take notes after each one. How did I do? And they give me this feedback, and maybe I should redo my photo. And maybe when I come in, I could smile more. Okay. And maybe I could tell them a funny story or make them want to be around me, not just think I'm a pretty dancer, and show them I have a brain or that I can choreograph so she gets
Yeah.
better and better and better at it. And she said it was right around the 1 year mark that she got her first major Broadway singing and dancing and acting role. That was her breakout role. But she said all her other friends were just like falling apart every time they got a no. And because she just had that way of thinking about framing it in her mind, that she was going to, it was a class and she was going to learn, she was going to master this, she was going to be the best auditioner in the world. Whereas most of us just loathed auditioning. That was the worst part of it. I no longer felt that way because she gave me that insight. And of course, I did a lot more directing than acting, as you know, but it does help me when it comes to like one of my first 100 speeches. I just pretended I was taking a class on how to be a good speaker. And I have a very shy side, so the fact that I stand up and speak to 10,000 people at a time is still pretty weird. But the reason I can do that is because I went and did 100 free ones where I pretended I was just taking class on how to get to be a good speaker. So she stays in my
Learning how to
head.
be a decent podcast guest.
You
Yeah.
are great. You're one of our most popular
Well,
podcast
I'll tell you
guests. So,
something
but
that comes to
she
mind.
passed away a couple of years ago, and I kind of like
Oh,
what you said about Hartman, who was also a lovely man. I was really, really crushed because she'd given me just such great advice in so many ways. But I think a lot of this comes down to how you think about these things. And what you said last time, and I quote you all the time, which is, frame the truth in the best possible way, or frame the truth in the best possible light. And that's what storytelling is can we tell a story that shortens people's ability to understand what you're about, what your values are, which gets us back to that book of, I think where you were going with this, which is, what do you stand for that, that should attract the right people to work with your company or buy products from you, and repel the wrong people because you don't want to waste your time with them anyway. But what did the book have to say? I assume that the one word has some meaning you could explain.
like a well-constructed screenplay or a story, it has to have a plot or a protagonist with a goal and an objective. But if it's going to be something that's really good, it also has to have a theme. So your business might be about, creating hardware products, or your goal might be to grow that business and make a lot of money, and maybe even more altruistically be to provide a service and a benefit to people who do something that you love doing, the builders, the craftsmen. But your theme, if your business, if your venture doesn't have a theme, you might at times feel yourself adrift or not knowing quite how to deal with the ups and downs or how to put things forward. And choosing one word can help. Sometimes it's a little longer than that. Nike, I have no idea who founded the company, but everybody knows that Nike's about just do it. Right.
That is their slogan. Yeah,
It's
for sure.
it's a slogan, and it could also be a mission statement for the company in 3 words. Right. Feel the fear and do it anyway is a phrase that I've heard, for example, opposed to sell sneakers. You know,
Right, right.
is that
Or think about
yeah,
like Bomba socks, where they say, you buy one high quality
yeah,
pair of socks from us, we will give one to somebody who needs it, because the founder discovered that homeless people who are unhoused around the country, their number one request was for socks. They couldn't get their hands on socks, and he said, "All right, we're going to make the best quality socks in the world, and you can buy one, and we will give one." And again, great
that's
story,
yeah,
great
that's a story that
background. We're
wraps
back
up
to
both the story of the
both
people founding the company and the story of the people that they're serving.
they're
Yeah,
serving. Yeah, I
exactly.
just love that. And so their one word might be, giving the best of oneself and of one's products. So
Yeah.
yeah, not quite one word,
Uh,
but I get the idea. Well, I love the idea of maybe, again, boiling it down to your top value, the thing that means the most to you, and then wrapping a story around that if possible, whether it's a client story, a customer story, several customer stories, or a theme.
it
But
can
yeah.
be because I love
Mm.
science fiction and genre films. I don't merely write science fiction. For me, a haunted house story has a sense of wonder about it. You know,
Yeah.
a Christmas
Uh,
comedy, which is the thing I broke in with, that children's book that I found.
yeah.
Uh, there's a sense of wonder on Christmas morning, certainly, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the notion that if you, this isn't something that I stamp or staple onto anything that I put out
Mhm.
into the world. It's my own quiet theme, but I'd like to think
Mm.
that whenever anybody gets a screenplay from me or something like that, whatever's between the title page and the end, that sometime a sense of wonder is going to be evoked.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that is, having known you forever, that is exactly who you are. You live life with a sense of wonder about everything being an adventure and everything being
well, you
interesting. And
can see all this sci-fi
all the
geeky
sci-fi
like
stuff. Well, and every
there's a
time you
time
tell me a
machine from
story,
H.G. Wells movie and Kiki stuff and Ray Bradbury novels back there and I
oh,
surround myself
wow.
with it even in my immediate environment. You can't
Does it
see that
help
I've
you
got
to
a
be more creative, or
yep,
does it help you think?
it does.
Mm.
On the bookshelf that I have behind this monitor, I have a bat signal, the headless horseman, and the Wicked Witch terrorizing Dorothy, a pirate, you know, the Starship
Naturally.
Enterprise is over here, the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is over there. So that at any
That's
given point,
lovely.
whenever I'm working on something, and by the way, that poster back there isn't there for vanity, but
Yeah.
but
Deja
it's
Vu is
because
the movie
but
that you guys
it's
wrote
there
with
because
Denzel,
sometimes I'm like,
starring Denzel Washington.
why
Yeah.
am I doing this? Oh God. Oh, that's why. Okay.
Well, because you had thousands and thousands of people. I was one of them who went to the movie, saw the movie, and really enjoyed it and really got something out of it
Well, I
and
appreciate that.
had that
Thanks.
amazing sense of it's one of my husband's one of his very favorite movies and mine too. And not because you wrote it, you and your partner, but I think again, it does create this sense of wonder and a whole new world and what is out there. And I think it's lovely that you chose that. I think that's absolutely lovely. We have five values, but I think that, we have a tagline that explains exactly what we do, which is double your business, double your impact, change the world. And what we've found is that growth is one of our five words that we have as our values, which, again, we have to always be growing. Every one of us commits to learning something new 30 minutes a day. We want to help
Oh
the
yeah.
companies we work with grow. You see, and we tend to only attract these really growth oriented people that are always learning something new and communicating that with the rest of the team. But that, double your business, double your impact, meaning, make it have purpose, and change the world, even if that's changing, the world in a 2 block radius or within your own family or within your home. The kinds of people that we work best with, those are their values. So we put them right out there in the Victory Company, and then that being our tagline: double your business, double your impact, change the world. And people, I came up with it years and years ago. One of my favorite clients, Liz Goodgold, said, "That is beautiful. You say that all the time. Why isn't it on your website?" And we've had it ever since, because she's very smart and a great marketer. But, it's interesting how that all involves growth. So if I had to pick one of our five values, I think that is what's most important to me. I remember I was watching the guy from Harvard. that talks the most popular course at Harvard is a course on happiness, and which is really surprising. And the guy that runs the course said that happiness is not, you get 8 hours of sleep every night, you're eating properly, and you're jogging every day. Those things will make you less unhappy, which is different. They're stored in different parts of the brain. They'll, again, they'll keep you healthy, they'll keep you well, but that's really has nothing to do with happiness. He said happiness is all about, do you have some sense of purpose? Are you feeling some satisfaction? Are you enjoying, are you doing things that have meaning and that you, in fact, enjoy? And I think that sense of purpose and meaning is what makes you a good leader within your company, as I evolve to be the best leader that I possibly can, because I want to be the leader my team deserves. I mean, that's one of my motivations these days. And so, yeah, so it's been interesting to see if that's what makes happiness. Then how do we tie, how do we make sure that there is a purpose that other people can get excited about within our teams, that they can give them that sense? If that's one of the three major food groups of happiness, how can we make sure that we have that one word that ties to some sense of purpose? And I don't mean like
Well,
a cheesy mission statement that goes on for 50 paragraphs. I mean actual purpose.
yeah, it harkens back to something I was saying earlier about having something else beyond yourself. Failure or success depends entirely on things that you
Right.
can't control. And then you start to
Right.
define yourself that way, and it's a road to despair. I actually got to pitch to Steven Spielberg. Terry and I had a meeting with Spielberg.
You and Terry. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. I love Spielberg's movies.
Yeah. And the reason I'm bringing it up
Who
is
doesn't?
not, hey, dig me, but it's the clearest example that I can think of what I'm telling you about and what we're talking about here is
I
that
love that.
that morning, my overwhelming thought was, today I'm going to get to meet Steven Spielberg and shake his hand. Anything else is gravy. He's
Your
probably
sense of
not going to buy this, and he didn't.
not yet. It's only a matter of time before he realizes.
No, actually, we sold it to Jerry Bruckheimer.
Oh, that's right. You did sell it. Oh, I do.
And it wasn't Deja Vu, actually. It was a different project.
It
was a different project, actually.
He'll
It was
buy
called
something else.
It was called Lightspeed. But
yeah, give him time.
But if I had gone in there thinking, oh my gosh, he's the biggest filmmaker in the world. Oh, it would be so great if he buys it. Oh, please, Lord, please let him buy it. Please buy it. Hi, are you going to buy this? My name's Bill. Please buy this.
Please buy this. Like,
as opposed to just me grinning ear to ear and saying
it's
hi.
It's an honor to meet you.
Well, wouldn't it be great if you go through life that way?
Well, and I say that a lot to salespeople because they do deal with, and speakers, professional speakers too. They deal with, deal with a lot of rejection and a lot of comments on my hair, no matter if it's short or long. I get you get weird. People are weird. Well, I always say that, 1% of the population came to the planet to be offended, and you don't want to take it away from them because it's all they've got. So, if you get all hung up on making every single person in that room happy, as one wonderful assistant once said to me, Lorraine, she said, you make that one guy who doesn't like your hair happy, and you're focused on that. You don't make the other 999 people happy. But one of the things I started to realize was, if I just had some sort of mantra or some sort of mission statement in my head when I went in to speak or when you go in to sell, it made all the difference in the world, because I am somewhat shy, as you know, sometimes. And the fact that I stand up in front of big groups is really because of my sense of purpose and my sense of mission only. And that is, I really, truly feel I was put on the earth to help people grow and succeed, to help companies grow and succeed, to help individuals grow and succeed. That's why I'm there. So when I walk onto the stage, no matter how scared I am, the first time I spoke to 10,000 people in South America, I thought I was going to die. But I had this sense of, this is my purpose. I can do this. And the only reason was because I said, even if they all decide they hate it, which fortunately they didn't, I can know that I am here to help them grow and help them succeed to the best of my ability. Now, if they don't like my hair, I don't freaking care. And it did change something in me. If you can boil it down to, what do you want your audience, whether it's a sales audience or as a speaker audience, what do you want them to feel? So if you can say, I want them to feel inspired and I want them to grow and succeed, that can mean that you're having a conversation with a potential client saying, well, what kind of growth are you looking for in your business? How would you like to be more successful? Now, every other salesperson is saying, look at this software I want to sell you. and not, oh, wow, well, maybe I know somebody can help you with that bigger problem, or maybe this software will help you get to that bigger goal. What do you think? But it's taking your own ego out of it and assuming that if you're talking to enough people and you're there for the right reasons, they're going to sense your intention below whatever you say and be happily engaged with that. And that
Yeah.
may get back to that one word, or in my case, I talk about, your noble goal, which is how do you want them to feel and how do you want to make them more successful? You wanted Steven Spielberg to feel seen, acknowledged, appreciated. You were honored to be there and get to know what his goals were, where he was going with all of that, whether you ended up with a deal or not. Now, it didn't happen that you did, but I bet he remembered you because everybody does. And you ended up selling it to Jerry Bruckheimer, which is also equally, if not maybe more amazing of an accomplishment. So I see where you're going with this, but there are definitely a lot of business applications to this. Yeah.
I think so. Two things come to mind. I don't know. Those of you who've stuck it out this long, you're valiant. Thank you.
We love you for watching to the end.
I hope to make it worth your while. And
the
with
best
something I'm
stuff
about to
is
say.
always at the end, right? The best stuff is always at the end.
I'll tell you a couple things that come to mind. One, I had seen a YouTube lecture some time ago, and I don't want to misattribute it. I think I know who said it, but I don't want to be wrong about that. But
maybe somebody in the comments. Once you tell the story, somebody in the comments can help
that
us.
That could be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be
help me out.
Tell us who. Well, somebody smart, figure it out, and put it in the comments for us.
Was talking about the nature of. I think he was talking about capitalism in general, but he's talking about something that had not occurred to me before, about what money actually is. Because we've been talking about noble goals and having a vision and defining yourself and growing your business and everything. But every business, even charities, need to make money.
They still need money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you need to make overhead. You need to make payroll. So,
yeah.
But he's talking about what money actually is. What does a dollar bill represent? And it's not such and such weight of gold backed with the full force of the United States government. A dollar bill, a piece of currency, is a piece of paper that essentially says, I did something for someone else. That's what this means. I paved their driveway. I walked their dog. I created a software program that they found helpful. So they gave me this piece of paper in exchange for this nice thing that I did, this service I provided, this goods that I delivered to them. That's what money is. Essentially, it's a piece of paper that proves that, and we exchange them really as proofs that I did something nice for this person, and now you're doing something nice for me. Here's this piece of paper. And now you can take it and give it to somebody else as proof that you did something that was worth this much to somebody else. And this is how the world gets along. This is one of the reasons that many of us inherently have an allergic reaction to inherited wealth, or wealth that people get unfairly or that gets dumped on them because you didn't do a thing for that. Well, why should that offend you? My garden blooms because we had wonderful rainfall and sunny skies all week. You don't think it's unfair. You don't hate me for having a good corn crop, but money we hate, or inherently we dislike. We cast a frown at people who have all these pieces of paper that says, I did something great for somebody, so now you do something for me, when in fact you did nothing to earn it. Right?
Yeah. I think that's a common concern. One of the things I find with the people, I've worked with a lot of people who have, a bit, maybe inherited a business, have generational wealth, and they have sometimes tremendous guilt about that. And I have to say, well, now it's your turn to turn all that wonderful green stuff of money, virtual money, into the next generation of how this company can help people. And if you keep leaning into the guilt side of it, which many of them do, you're never going to fulfill your sense of mission, which may be different than your mom's who had the business before you, or your dad or granddad who had the business before that. But we do have an aversion. And I think it's sad and terrifying, some of those people, because they feel like they have terrible imposter syndrome too. I don't belong here. I
Yeah.
didn't earn it. People aren't going to respect me. And so they have to
Trying to earn the
find,
money you have. Yeah.
yeah, really have to put so much more effort into being seen as the leader. And it can be quite tough. But again, if they turn that into a whole new sense of mission for themselves, or maybe they develop a charitable arm to the business that they're passionate about, again, people will rally around them, even though they didn't necessarily earn the money that they are working with right at the moment. But yeah, so I can see what you're saying. So interesting about money and the stories that people have about money. Interesting. So in your business,
Yeah,
how do we turn those stories that people have about money to our advantage, do you think?
well, I think it can help to define, okay, what's the good thing you want to do with this?
There you go. That's what I thought you were going to say. Yeah.
It's one thing to say, I want to sell sneakers. It's another thing to say, I want to encourage people who don't think they can possibly be athletic. Yes, you can. Just do it. Go out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
What many of it, this being the early part of the year as we're recording this, so how many of us joined a gym, right? Because, that's when Planet Fitness runs all of its ads, because they know that everybody's New Year's resolution. But setting it aside, to have something beyond yourself, the noble goal that you mentioned before, or the noble purpose, that can matter a whole lot, particularly because there might be times when you're operating in the red, but the noble purpose that you're out there for is actually going. And at times like that, the only reason you're doing this is money, then you might not be able to weather a storm because, well, I'm not making money. That's the only reason that this business exists. Why am I doing this?
And you're going to attract people to work for you that only have money as a motivator.
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs, early in the life of Apple, recruited, and forgive me, I can't remember the man's name, but he recruited somebody key to help run his company who was running Pepsi Cola. I think he was high up the corporate ladder at Pepsi Cola. I don't think at that time Apple was not as big as Pepsi by any means. I don't think the compensation package that Steve Jobs could offer him, other than company stock, could compete with Pepsi Cola. And I think this guy that he was trying to recruit was like, why would I leave Pepsi in order to do this? And Jobs rather famously said, do you want to spend your life selling sugar water, or do you want to improve the world, right?
Wow. Say that again. Do you want to what? Say it again. I love that.
I'm sure I'm paraphrasing him poorly, but Steve Jobs, the pitch that he made to this person that he wanted to help found his company was not, well, we're on track. We're on track.
We'll make more eventually. We'll get you more.
We're on track for 1.2 million next quarter or something like that. He said the way that he recruited him, that he tipped the scale in his own favor was the noble purpose of the company. He said, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugar water, or do you want to help me change the world?
Oh, that's just brilliant. I love that.
Right.
I love that. And that's a story. That's a very short story. Yeah. And again, people think that your story needs to be, long and complicated, and somebody else's is going to be more interesting than yours. That is the perfect example of noble purpose and of a very, very short story. Yeah. It
is. And something that when I am endeavoring to do short films and now an independent feature, often low budget filmmaking is done by writers, directors who are begging, borrowing favors from everybody. A lot of your favorite filmmakers, their first films were begun by begging my uncle, the dentist, for $5,000,
right.
And basically trying to get people to join you on this mad adventure. Yeah. And one of the things that will help is for a young filmmaker is if you can get people excited about the story that your film's going to be about, right? But sometimes the way that you, as a young artist or a filmmaker, there were patrons of the arts that go all the way back to Michelangelo and earlier, where people with deep pockets will get behind you because they believe in your art. They believe in what it is you're trying to do. your business, if you have this noble purpose or this one word that defines it beyond money, 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 it can lead people to leave better jobs to come join you, perhaps, or to at least come in early, stay late, tell their friends, as you've experienced. Did I tell the story of my daughter and the sale of Deja Vu? I was blocked on that script on and off. It took 7 years to write. And at one point I was blocked on it for, I think, 2 years because my heart and soul and self-esteem and my career and everything was wrapped up in whether this, I was afraid if it doesn't sell, then I have to find something else to do in life because this is the best thing I've ever worked on, I've ever written. And if I have to do something else in life, I don't know what else to do and I'll be crushed. That was how I was feeling about it. But at one point, my daughter was less than a week old. I was standing over her at night in the dark apartment. We had a 1-bedroom apartment. Her crib was in what was supposed to be the dining room. And I was looking down at her in her sleep. If I'm not careful, I get choked up on you. And I thought, this little girl deserves a daddy who's trying as hard as he can. I've got this opportunity in front of me and I'm not finishing it because I'm scared. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. And wanting to finish that script because of her instead of because of me is what got it finished. And I feel like God said, okay, you're welcome. All right, now you got your head in the right place, you know. But so I offer it not because, hey, everybody dig me, but because I hope if there's some inspiration to be drawn from it. If you are facing some ridiculously huge obstacle, whether it's your own fear about your business venture, whether it's other voices telling you, forget it, you're never going to succeed at this, you're crazy, that's ridiculous, or whether it's you've only got X amount of money and the contractor is going to cost this and the licensing fees or whatever, where what you're daunted by can be practical or it can be internal. Having something that you love beyond yourself and beyond money or success can be the thing that keeps you going when you've got 100 miles of pack ice ahead of you that you have to break through. It might lead you to go on towards something that will ultimately be successful when without that thing that you love beyond yourself or beyond the business itself, you might have just given up, you know. Money's not worth this, but my daughter is. Or money's not worth this, but putting this out into the world or giving people something affordable that they can give to their child that's going to help them grow or learn, whatever it is that you're out there doing. If it's sneakers, helping one person who never thought they could go jogging, you know, well, actually, this is kind of cool. I'll give this a shot. That can keep you going in the face of things that would otherwise crush you or your dream.
That was beautiful. No, that was beautiful. And I love that. That story is really moving. And I think, yeah, we have to find out what is bigger than ourselves and how do we keep going even when things are challenging. I see a lot of businesses that are, I know in my bones, are on the cusp of real success. And I see people get scared and pull back, or it's like you've gone to the moon and like, now what are you going to do? So you're saying this was your moonshot and you're about to get to that. So rather than pull away from that, or again, I see people whose businesses are having a tough time and they're on the cusp of real success and they just give up just a little bit too soon. You have to just kind of stick with it and go to the end of it, even if it were not to be successful, even if Deja Vu had not sold and all these other things you've sold since had not. Knowing that you had done all you possibly could was the important part. You need a goal beyond the goal now. That's all. That's all. But if the truth of your company requires cartoon characters or requires a funny story that may or may not be true, that is tongue-in-cheek, that people know isn't true, but is the essence of what you want your company to say, yeah, you can get, I think what you're saying is your stories can get a bit creative as long as you're not being in any way deceptive or unfair, and that you continue that sense of giving something of value to other people that they happily will give you money for. If they feel like they got $2 worth of of value or £2 worth of value or €2 worth of value, depending on where you live, and they only paid $1 for it or a pound for it or €1 for it, that's just such a big win. You created some value, but you can get fun and creative with it if there isn't anything particularly interesting about how you got started. Hey, I came up with a business plan in college and, I
Yeah.
executed it and that kind of thing. So there
And
might
I
be a
will
way
offer,
to be a little more
yeah,
creative. Yeah.
I will offer one other thought along those lines is that whatever story you're crafting, however you're portraying yourself, your business, your product, whatever it is, ultimately it has to deliver or surpass what expectations or hopes that story evokes. People might be interested, I don't think they are, but I think people might be interested in reading something that I wrote because they read in the Los Angeles Times about how I was temping in New York and met Terry Rossio in a writer's chat room on America Online. And we formed this long
Way
distance
back when.
friendship and
Yeah.
then sold a screenplay for $5 million. That's an interesting story.
Yes, it
But,
is. You're an interesting guy.
but by the time somebody picks up something that I've written, that is flown out of their head by the time they turn past the title page. That story is not going to somehow help me sell that script.
No. Yeah.
Maybe
You better have something of incredible value and incredible wonder for them to receive. Yeah. Which
people,
that's where the work ethic comes in of you always say about how you do as many revisions as it takes, getting other people to give you feedback, going back and looking at it. You can be promising something so fabulous, but that means on the other end, yeah, you really do have to deliver and you have to put in the work to make it that level of excellence that you can be proud of. Because then even if they don't choose it, your product, your service, your screenplay, whatever, you can hold your head up high and say, I gave the best bit of wonder out there that I possibly could. Yeah. Good for you.
So.
And you always do. And you always do. You always deliver. And I'm really proud of you. So thank you so much for all your insights and ideas. I think these are really, really helpful. I know you are watching and you are listening as a part of the Inspiring Victory Tribe. And you requested that we bring Bill back so we could talk stories. And you're welcome. We brought him to you. And Bill, you've been kind enough to come back a third time. Can't tell you how grateful I am. Always just lovely to see you. So happy to see your face.
See you too, Sarah.
And we're also proud of your success. And we'll be posting when your show comes out. We'll be posting when your movie comes out, and also when the Amazon time zone comes out. We'll be sure and make sure everybody has access to see all the movies and shows that you have coming out. But thank you. Congratulations on all your many successes these days. And please send my love to your family.
And to Steve. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you for being a part of the tribe. Thank you for watching the Inspiring Victory show at home and at your offices. Thank you for continuing to like and subscribe and tell friends, because that's how we've been able to reach more people lately. I'm very grateful for that. But again, double your business, double your impact, change the world. And again, do something brave every day, whether that's find a great story attached to your company or find a great story attached to your clients, or just find that noble goal or noble purpose or that one thing that Bill was talking about. Thank you for being with us. Have a great rest of your week. And we are honored and delighted to have you as part of the Inspiring Victory Tribe. Thank you. And thank you, Bill.
Thanks, everybody.